Telltale Midnight presents a Halloweekly production. Help Wanted by Dave Rudden. Narrated by Nicholas Rollins. I'm answering the advertisement, sir. Vast and terrible, Brackley Hall billowed out in unsightly folds across the lakeshore for which it was named. It would not have the decency to burn down for another 20 years, and was only now tipping into a sort of sullen, sagging decline. The advertisement, murmured John Length, through a mouth like a coal shuttle. Yes, his lips drooled. The advertisement, he repeated sadly, and beckoned Maeve in. The foyer was cavernous, lit only by a single gas lamp in John Length's massive fist. He took Maeve's bag, taking great care that the fingers did not touch the handle, and led her to a set of marble stairs. Have you worked in a big house before? Yes. Where? Sligo. Where? The Croftons. Ah, you have a letter of recommendation? Yes. Clutched stiffly by his side. The lamp illuminated only slivers of the portraits they passed. A chin, a cheekbone, a toothy smile, before John Length abruptly turned and 5 generations of Brackleys were suddenly present and correct, staring down at her with painted disdain. Lord Brackley takes a single egg for breakfast. He does not lunch, but will require a blanket at noon. He likes to sit by the window and look upon the lake. Dinner must be no later than 6. Repeat this, please. Maeve did without hesitation. Good, he blinked, a doleful dragging of skin across eye. And you are answering the advertisement. Yes, said Maeve. And you have read the advertisement. Yes, Maeve said. And you understand the words as they were presented in the advertisement. Yes, Maeve said. They continued. The corridor was long, each step crackling like a frost-stiff grass, though the wallpaper's discoloration indicated that this might not have always been the case. Finally, they reached a massive door that John Length bent to unlock. Locked from the... Maeve, is it? Bleached and lifeless, the voice flickered the lamp in John Length's hand. The bedroom beyond had been warmed to a furnace heat by a great hearth, and the last remnant of the cold left her bones with a final spiteful shiver. Have you brought me an idiot? Speak, girl, Lord Brackley, Maeve said, and executed a perfect curtsy. Skirt held between thumb and first 2 fingers, straight back, right foot a couple inches behind the left. Lord Brackley was nearing his 1st century, and all of the vitality of those 100 years seemed to have drained solely into his mouth and hands. He wore a robe, or had been bundled up in one like a baby bird. Maeve King, formerly of the Sligo Croftons. His voice was surprisingly mellifluous. It seemed to better fit the huge velvet chair, not the tattered little man in it. Maeve curtsied again. Stop that. You'll make me ill. How did you find my advertisement? It was passed to me, Maeve said. It seemed to be explanation enough. The Lord shifted his chair. John Length started forward, only to be waved to a halt. Don't fuss. So, girl, you remember the advertisement. You know what it says. What to you, Maeve King, formerly of the Sligo Croftons, is the most important detail? The ghost of a frown crossed Maeve's features before being smoothed away. The last line, which was, under no circumstances is the light above the cellar door to go out. Maeve had quietly begun contemplating whether Lord Brackley had quietly expired when he spoke up again. And why do you believe that line to be important? John Length exhaled mournfully, and Maeve let down the frown to sit a little longer this time before answering. It was specific. It was. It had also been in bold and underlined. Ha! The old man said. Maeve noted that he had not laughed. He had, in fact, said the word. Ha! Let me have a proper look at you. Maeve King, in silhouette, reed thin and wary, her skin winter-starved of freckles, her mouth unnecessarily large when you could have fit every possible expression in the word into those bright brown eyes. You will not let the light above the cellar door go out, Lord Brackley said. No, my lord, Maeve said, feeling her eyes shrink in the heat of the fire. You will not let the light above the cellar door go out, John Length said, and his voice was full of dolorous promise. I won't, Maeve said, and the crackle of the flames sounded like an applause. It seemed ridiculous to be drowsy now here, but the legs were sore from walking all their way, and the air was very warm, and the flattering of her eyelids had joined in on the applause. You will not, the 2 men began, and Maeve's eyes opened again. "My lord, I understand." Lord Brackley's voice sounded slightly upon. "Then you are excused." Those huge hands curled in on each other like dying spiders. "Rest. In the morning, you will be put to work." About an hour later, Maeve King had sat on the tiny bed she had been assigned, her hands folded in her lap, hair loose and tumbling around her shoulders. She sat like that for a very long time before, in one smooth moment, she fell to her side and went to sleep. The home of the Sligo Croftons had been huge and airy, full of sunlight and children, and therefore extremely difficult to keep clean. Brackley Hall, however, has no work at all. Lord Brackley did not entertain, so the drawing room was useless, and he was so fond of remarking that it would take a few remaining years left of him to simply reach the west dining hall, let alone for it to be heated. The conservatory, a mildewed tumor of glass and brick, had not been opened in Maeve's lifetime, and Lord Brackley had forgotten he had a library. So eventually, John Length had stopped cleaning it. Maeve's first day in Brackley Hall was spent filling coal buckets, washing John Length's 4 shirts and the Lord's rich, thick robes. She spoke to Lord Brackley twice. "Your blanket, my lord." "Good." And then later, "Your dinner, my lord." "Yes." And begun to cautiously assume her duties were being fulfilled to satisfaction. It was on her 3rd day that John Length appeared at her shoulder, quiet as a cat. "Follow me." John Length spent the day sitting on a small wooden stool at the top of the cellar stairs. The cellar itself was accessed through a small, disused kitchen, filled with the 11th Lord Brackley's taxidermied menagerie. Maeve had watched him the day before under the guise of innocently dusting a molting mounted stag. The man's servant did not read. He did not write letters. He simply sat staring at the cast-iron wall bracket in the center of the cellar door. The candle itself was a fat door-stopper of a thing, tall and white and as thick as Maeve's wrist. And this part of the house was full of the clean, warm smell of melting wax. "Come," John Length intoned. Maeve came and stood. Stacked beside the stool were 3 boxes of candles, identical to the ones in the bracket, and wrapped of thin tapers. "I must go to the village and buy coal," he said, seemingly close to tears at the thought. "If the candle goes below the mark of my nail," he indicated a gouge a quarter of the way from the base, "then you will light another candle. The first one will be allowed to burn down to conjunction with the second. Do you understand? Not for a moment will the light not shine. Do you?" "Yes," Maeve said. Brimming black eyes stared at her. "You must not let—" "I understand," Maeve said. "I will sit. You are buying coal. I will not let the light go out." He stared at her reproachfully for a few seconds, and then he was gone. Maeve sat and stared at the cellar door. It looked no different from any other door in the house. Thick, age-stained oak with a transom of diamond-patterned glass. Splinters had separated from the edges of the boards, stiff and sharp and reaching. The bracket was the only oddity. The weathered iron more suitable for outside use. Every single gap through which an errant draft could be reached had been stopped with a cloth, and the air was close and warm. Maeve soon found herself digging a nail in the back of her hand to stave off sleep. The candle flickered. Maeve would not have noticed it at all. The flame had been unnaturally still, the air dry and stale. Again, a flicker with no breeze to cause it. In slow stages, Maeve got to her feet. The candle flame had stilled, once again becoming a motionless fingernail of gold. But, as she placed her foot on the first step of the stairs, Maeve became aware of a noise so faint her heartbeat near drowned it out. A moth was batting its wings frantically on the other side of the door. Maeve let out a breath. She'd watched them terrified as a child, fat-bodied and furred, spinning in parabolas, waiting for a spark to reduce them to ash. The batting was louder, like impatient fingertips on the other side of the door, and Maeve was 4 steps down from the staircase now. The poor thing must have been frustrated out of its mind, divided by glass from the light it craved. Did moths have minds? Surely they must. To contain such want for light? You're safer there, she thought, at the bottom of the staircase now, and Maeve reached out her hand and gazed through the wood. There was a new lock on this door as well. She didn't possess a key for any door in the house. Why would she? The door jumped on its hinges. Maeve's back hit the steps before she knew she'd left her feet. Pain thrilled her spine. She barely noticed. It had not been a knock. Even as the thought crossed her mind, the door twitched again, straining against the metal holding it in place. It had not been a knock. Not John Length playing games, not the invalid Lord Brackley. Restored to life and strength, a knock was an impact on a central point. Here the door simply jumped, as if every single inch of its surface had been pressed on hard at once. Maeve had a sudden image, sharp and unwelcome, of thousands upon thousands of moths clinging to the other side of the door, leaping outwards in hideous billowing synchronicity before coming down like the heel of a hand. "Miss?" John Length stood at the top of the stairs. All that stopped Maeve taking the steps 2 at a time was her absolute unwillingness to take her eyes from the cellar door. Instead, she walked backwards slowly, calves straining, until John Length was between her and the light. He did not look at her, taking a new wrap of tapers from his pocket to place beside the others. "I will not have to leave again for a while," he murmured. "I am sorry, miss." He knelt to the box by the stool, retrieving a fresh candle wrapped in paper. Maeve started to see that the candle in the bracket was a little more than a scab of wax, as if the whole day had been burned in the blink of an eye. John Length replaced it carefully. Behind the door, the fluttering of a moth had become sleepy and slow. "Your dinner, my lord." "Good. A blanket, my lord." "Yes." The old man turned his head with a creak of sinew. "How are you settling in?" She swept the blanket down, tucked it in. "Very good, my lord. More seemed to be required. Your home is very beautiful." Lord Brackley barred his teeth into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You should have seen it when I was a boy." The long fingers plucked at the blanket's hem. "I had brothers. You could hear them. At every corner of the house, no matter where you were in the folds of this place, you knew where they were. It was a comfort." A dry rattle of breath. "I imagine you have a large family." 14, my lord." The old man's laugh was shockingly loud. 14? Marvelous. You must have been able to hear them wherever you were." "Wasn't hard, my lord." She said the words before thinking, and the lord was suddenly silent. Those upstairs didn't actually want to hear your answers. They just wanted frames for whatever joke or point amused them. She learned that when they made her change her name to something better suited to an colonizer's mouth. "Oh." But there was something in his voice. "It was a one-room cottage, my lord." The old man's crackling went on for so long that despite herself, Maeve's lips twitched in a grin. "Is that why you left?" "No, my lord. Been working since I was 13, my lord." "And what are you now?" 16, my lord." "Ah." Lord Brackley fell silent, and that silence stretched until Maeve's thoughts veered into the washing that needed to be done, and the dusting that hadn't been finished, and inevitably down to the marble staircase of the foyer to a room painted by the shadows of great beasts, and a second staircase of wax-streaked wood. "May I be excused, my lord?" "Not just yet." A skeletal palm was presented to the fire and then withdrawn, as if disappointed at what it found. "I was surprised that my advertisement reached Sligo, Miss King. We do not take from local families anymore. I expected Caventown, maybe. Monaghan. I did not expect that little piece of paper to travel all the way to the coast, nor for a girl to travel all the way back. Staff passed notes, me lord. If we're looking for a move, like housekeepers, manservants, maids, we know who's looking." "Is that how it's done?" Lord Brackley gave a papery, amused sigh. "I confess to be unfamiliar with the mechanics." "One of the ways, me lord." "Oh, and the others?" "There are fairs, me lord," Maeve said, with careful neutrality. "I'm the oldest, so me and the the Smiths, we stood, me lord, in the middle of the village to be chosen." "Chosen?" "They come from big houses, me lord, to pick girls to work." She said too much. They wanted the Maeve King answer. No one wanted to know what Maeve Conry thought. Soft insistence in the voice of the lord. "Go on." "I stood there for an hour, and another. I started to wonder why I not be chosen. And part of me was glad because it meant I could stay home. And part of me was terrified, me lord, because I needed to work. I needed to earn. And finally, at nearly dark, the Crofton's housekeeper came down. And she was hard, me lord. But she wasn't bad. And Lord Crofton drank. But he wasn't a bad man either. And his wife was kind, and she loved her children. And it was fine, me lord. It was all right. Thank God." Maeve Conry swallowed. "But sometimes, when I couldn't sleep, I'd lie in bed with the other maids, and I'd wonder, not about the ones who didn't get picked, But the others. I had been lucky, my lord. But we all went off to different places. I don't know what happened to them, or who they were that came to take them away. And I felt bad, my lord, for being safe. A fair, Lord Brackley said in his voice fluttering of dry, dead wings. Yes, I thought it might be something like that. Was it there that she decided? Something moved in her, delicate and inexorable as a clock hand, and just like that, she made a choice she hadn't been sure she was able to make. May I be excused, my lord? No, Lord Brackley said, and Maeve wasn't sure what she hated more, the distraction in his denial or the way she still couldn't refuse. Hand scrabbled, then went still, then scrabbled again. John went to buy coal yesterday. Maeve went cold. Yes, my lord. Did the door... Maeve's didn't say anything. The old man's eyes were mirror for the fire, and the crackle and pop could have been the burning logs or giant knuckles stretching in their sheaths of skin. It might surprise you to know that I was once a handsome boy. Maeve went silent. Lord Brackley snorted. It surprises me, but it's true. Of all my brothers, I was the beauty, and still am, I suppose, seeing as they are dead. I'm sorry for your loss, my lord. Another snort. I imagine you are. Do not trouble yourself. It has been a very long time. 2 to war, another 2 disease. Like a nursery rhyme, none were truly unexpected or truly preventable. We all knew what would happen as soon as they enlisted, or as soon as he took to his bed. He hesitated. Her name was Quiva. Familiar syllables unfamiliar in his mouth. A local girl, I confess. I do not know if there was a fair, or if she answered an advertisement. She was very pretty and very sweet. A log shifted in the fire. Maeve's shadow was now suddenly huge and thin on the wall. I think I loved her. I was devastated when she suddenly would not speak to me, avoided me, ran from me, as far as she was allowed, at least. Her family needed the money too, but something had changed, and we were never again closer than the width of a room. I know what happened now, of course, but at the time, I thought part of me was dying. Maeve's finger twitched, and the claw of the shadow on the wall curled in response. A mad urge built in her, that her shadow could flee where she could not. Great retreating strides all the way back to Sligo and the iron-gray sea. She was with child. I wonder how she hid it, how many lies she had to tell. I knew nothing of these things, and I knew far less then. She gave birth in the doorway of the cellar, and neither she nor the baby survived. Dying in a doorway, I ask myself, is that why it happened? Between a place, not one thing or the other. He sighed. It would be nice if there were logic to these things, if there were sense, but I know there isn't. I went to war too. And the candle? Maeve's voice was hoarse. They say the ghost of a baby is the worst of all things, because it doesn't know what's happening. You can't reason with it. There's nothing it wants because it was never old enough to want anything. They become malignant. Every door between here and there is locked. We replace them often. They keep rusting in the damp. We are very close to the lake. I keep the candle lit and it seems to soothe it. She was afraid of the dark, you see, so I left her a light. The old man's voice was faint, dragged with sleep. I think I loved her, but I mustn't have, because if I loved her, I would have known. Wouldn't I have known? Maeve stood there waiting for more words, and when none came, very quietly, she left. Dawn broke over Brackley Lake to find, as always, John Length waiting for it. Lord Brackley would not have wakened for some hours yet, and Maeve would have not begun work until the manservant rapped at her door. For the next while, at least, the sole waking inhabitant of Brackley Hall was John Length. That pleased him. He made his way to the stool as always, breakfast plate in hand, and something was wrong. He knew it by the quality of the air. He knew it by the smell. He knew it long before he saw the carefully crushed remains of 3 dozen candles in the disused kitchen's disused hearth. Something squished between his stocking toes. A graveyard of tappers, each soft wooden splint individually soaked and scattered and useless. John Length had worked in this house for a very long time. His father before him. They had always done everything required of them. Everything. John Length's practiced eye measured the height of the candle burning merrily in its bracket. In just a few short strides, he was at the hall's front door. He opened it carefully and stepped out into the frigid morning air, and then ran for his life. What? Lord Brackley's voice woke first, then his hands. Maeve watched life return piecemeal, trembling lips, a crook of the shoulders, and then finally his eyes, bright and blue in the sunlight of the morning. "Close the shutters," he muttered. "John." "No," Maeve said, "not John." Lord Brackley's bedclothes fell forward, revealing his vest and shrunken, vein chest. He blinked confusedly, jerking them back around his neck. "What is this?" With a sound like ash separating from a cigar, something flung itself softly against the closed bedroom door. Lord Brackley lost the little color he had left. "The cellar light." "Yes," Maeve said. She sat on John Link's stool, her toilet neat, her coat on, the window shutter drawstrings wrapped around her fingers. The light above the cellar door had gone out, Lord Brackley. A 1-2 patter. Soft little bodies, soft little wings. "No. No! John!" Maeve said nothing. She had seen John halfway across the field, accelerating. Even if he were in the house, the high querulous squeaks of the Lord were traveling no distance at all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like a pianist's hands preparing to play. When Lord Brackley finally spoke, the words were clipped and arch. "The advertisement was quite clear, Miss King." "Connery," she corrected, not unkindly. "And I wasn't answering your advertisement. I was answering hers." The bedroom door swung open. Beyond was a wall of gray, roiling wings, fat little bodies bouncing and flopping from the floor and frame. Not a single one crossed the sun-draped threshold. "Ah," the man said. "Ah." Maeve kept her eyes resolutely on Lord Brackley. A job was a job, and she had done this. She wanted to do this. Because she had been asked to, and because there were fairs in every town. "Yes," the old man said, and with not a little effort kicked off the heavy blankets. He was very small. "Yes, I will stand for this, I think." Maeve couldn't help herself. "Do you want me to?" "No." She shut her mouth with a clack, watching Lord Brackley push himself to his feet in a cascade of gasps. He stood, and Maeve saw that he might have once stood tall, maybe even beautiful, and then she pulled the shutters closed. Darkness and a blizzard of moths' tiny feet played along her lips. Soft impact shook her shoulders. They were in her hair, struggling, and they found their way to her hands and launched themselves free again. There might have been voices in the beating of wings, but then again, there might not. When she opened her eyes, they and Lord Brackley were gone. It was a long walk to the village of Bonboy, and it was only by the church that she noticed the stiff fold in her pocket. For an instant, her hands jerked away. A moth, before she steeled herself and withdrew a small piece of paper that had not been there before. Another ad, another girl. Maeve stared at it for a moment longer, and then threw it as far as she could. We hope you enjoyed this production of Help Wanted by Dave Rudden, presented by Telltale Midnight, produced by Halloweekly. Copyright 2017.